Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world listening to the podcast. Welcome to the Lead Different podcast. We are excited to talk to you today and to share with you one of my favorite new leaders that I've started working with. His name is Nick Fehrenbach with Faith Moving, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. I can't wait to bring him on, but Nick Fehrenbach is the owner of Faith Moving Company. He is a purpose-driven entrepreneur dedicated to making a positive impact in his community. He's grounded in Christian values. Nick leads his business with a focus on honesty, integrity, and compassion, aiming to ease the pressure and the stress of moving while reflecting Christ's love. Faith Moving Company offers comprehensive moving services, including expert packing solutions with high-quality materials to ensure the safe transport of all items. For Nick, it's not just about moving belongings. It's about moving homes, moving memories, and moving lives. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our good friend, Nick Fehrenbach. Nick, how are you doing?
Good, Dan. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being on, Nick. You know, it has been such a pleasure to get to know you, get to know your family. I haven't met little Nick, but I've met Jordan, who's now part of the business. Getting to know, and you know, when we talk about family, we're not just talking about Nick's family. I'm talking about your team also. I've had the opportunity to work with your team, and it really operates like a family. Dylan, your second in command, your cohort in leadership, and the rest of the team. It was such a pleasure to see such a group of people who are just really dedicated and aligned around a mission. So I knew I wanted to have you on the podcast because as a young leader of a company that's doing great things and trying to create some change in an industry that's pretty cookie cutter already, I wanted to make sure and share some of your leadership thoughts with our audience. So why don't we start? I'd love to start with this, Nick. Tell us what caused you to start Faith Moving Company?
I get that question all the time because, you know, moving is so stressful. People are, you know, blown away that I wanted to start a moving company, my family included, when I first started. I've always been an entrepreneur, and I've always had that drive since a child. And so I was in college. I was working at FedEx at the time, finishing up my marketing degree. And we had a last senior project where we would create a business on paper. And so I decided to create a moving company. I had done a little bit of side moving during my college career. I was in a traveling band. And so to make money for tours, we would move people's possessions. So I kind of got good at it. So we, it was my senior year. I was working at FedEx early in the morning. I'd go in at 2:30, leave at 9 a.m. I'd go to school, and then I'd go knock out a move in the evening, or vice versa. And it got to the point where I created this business on paper for college, and I decided, you know what, let's just try this business. I already have it all written out, and I started calling around, and I realized that a lot of people here in Albuquerque, I would call to get prices from another moving company, and they wouldn't answer the phone, or if they did, the customer service was very lacking. So I kind of started doing research and realized, you know, the moving industry has a really bad mark on it. Even in media, you look at movers in movies and films, they're smoking cigarettes in the home. They have, they're never uniformed. And so I just saw that there was a big gap. So I really
they're bumbling around, they're breaking stuff. Yeah, you're right. They're not portrayed well.
Right. On the news, all you hear about movers is scams, and it's true. There's, a lot of bad stuff going on. So I saw that there was a big gap in customer service there. So I decided to do it. It was about a year into the business. I started making a little bit more money with the moving company than I did working at FedEx. And it was one morning where I was coming up this hill near the airport where I worked. And it was so early in the morning after doing a long move. And I fell asleep on the road going up this hill. And it was where a lot of the semi trucks come down the hill. And so I luckily woke up and swerved over and nothing happened. But I pulled into the parking lot and I looked at the neon FedEx sign, and I kind of, with tears in my eyes, realized if I died this morning, they would replace me tomorrow, because
Right.
business has to move on. And so I walked in that morning and gave my 2-week notice to my boss. And, a lot of the remarks from some of the employees were, well, we'll see you in a year when you fail. And it kind of drove me to make it work. And,
Isn't that amazing? And you're absolutely right. There's a saying that says you can spend your life helping someone else achieve their dreams, or you can start on your own dream, and that's what you did. And then you got a little bit of extra motivation from your coworkers, because I'm sure they've seen it, right? They've seen guys who say, you know what, I'm going to go start my own business and do my own thing, and then they see him come back within a year. But how long ago was that for you, Nick?
That'd be 7 years now.
7 years ago. So no, and there's no turning back. I've personally seen the growth just even in the past few months that you and I have been working together. You're really good. There's a lot of things that you do really well. I think you're a great leader. I love the way that you lead your team, and there's some things that I think you've done well already. But the other thing that I think that you have that's missing in a lot of entrepreneurs, and the reason you're still in business 7 years later, is your discipline. You set a revenue goal, and we're not going to get into specifics, but you set a revenue goal at the beginning of the year, and you're already expanding that goal because you're already blowing out of the water, and you do that through the discipline. So I want to talk a little bit about the fact that let's talk about faith moving. What leads to the name Faith Moving? That's, we're on the Lead Different podcast. So one of the ways that I see that you're different is you put your faith up front, and you talk about the values that come from your faith and how you implement them into your business. That's got to make you very different from the other moving companies, not just in Albuquerque, but across the U.S. So tell us a little bit about what led to the decision to go with a faith moving company.
Yeah. I've always been a believer since a young age. Went to Hope Christian School my whole early middle school and high school years, and I just saw God working in my life throughout college, and He guided me to this business. So I've always had faith in my life, so I just wanted it to be in my business as well. The name Faith Moving comes from the scripture in Matthew 17:20 about the faith of a mustard seed can move mountains. And so it really is just a leap of faith to start a business. I always heard it put, to be an entrepreneur, you jump out of the plane and build the parachute on the way down. So that's
right.
exactly what I'm doing. And so I realized that we're really moving mountains in people's lives with moving, because it's one of the most stressful things you can go through is a move. So we put those values into our business every day. I'm praying with my team. It's not just a name, it's a culture. I pray with my team. I pray for my team every day. And you don't have to be a Christian to work here.
Right.
But we just ask to put those values in, and it really seems to attract our client base. People all the time tell me over the phone, I picked your company to call you because of the name. It just resounded with me, and I always joke that I want to be the Chick-fil-A of moving. Closed on Sunday with a with a customer service driven model. So that's where it came from.
And you've done already a really good job with, like I said, I've had an opportunity to meet your team. What I also see that, and I want people to really understand, so listeners and leaders that are listening, there's something you said, Nick, that's really important. You don't have to be Christian or a person of deep faith to work here, but you do have to adhere to the values. And I think that's really important. I think leadership starts at the top, and I think you model those values. I love the idea of, like you said, jump out of the plane and build the parachute on the way down. I saw a bumper sticker on the way to work this morning. I took a picture of it. I'll probably create a social media post from it. It said, "You at least have to try."
Mm.
And, I was recording a video over the weekend, and we talked about the fact that so many dreams die before they even get started. I've met brilliant people with IQs in the 160s and 170s who never started on their dream, and the dream just died. They continue to work for someone else. And it's not that it was a bad thing. They lived good lives. They made contributions. They made a good living and earned a pension, but they didn't ever start on their dreams. And I've met people with average intelligence, much less intellect, who said, "You know what, I'm going to go for it." And they've built empires. And so tell us about what's the dream. So you talked about being the Chick-fil-A of moving. And I totally see that in your team. Tell us about some of the things that people are going to see that are different, that you're already doing, because first of all, congratulations on taking your senior project and converting it into an actual business. I had the same thing. So I'll tell you, this is just an aside, guys. This is really funny. I thought of Netflix when my senior project was about being able to mail people movies so that they wouldn't have to go to the Blockbuster. I thought of that idea because that's how Netflix started. Remember, they would send you a CD, you'd watch it, and then you'd mail it back. But it was just my senior project. And sure enough, a few years later, Netflix started. I graduated college in 92. And so I know personally that those dreams, you just have to go ahead and put them into action, because if not, someone else will. So your dream was to start a moving company. You started out, was it just you moving people by yourself with a truck? Tell us about the early beginnings. I know the size of your team. Take us from, year 1 to year 7. What have you done differently as you've grown?
Right. Yeah. So year 1 was a Toyota Corolla sedan with dollies sticking out the windows and moving blankets. And then I would go rent a U-Haul. And it grew from there. The next year, I was able to purchase a little 16-foot truck. And about year 2.5, 3, I met Dylan, who you were speaking of before. And that's when things really started to turn for me, because I needed somebody. You need a partner. I mean, I always think about that meme where you see Jeff Bezos sitting at his office with his desk is a door. He has just a door laying across, as his desk, and a banner that's spray painted Amazon, and a pile of books on his desk, and it said if he'd still be here if it wasn't for a team. And so that Dylan was really my go-to guy. And the funny story about him, I think it was just kind of like it was another God moment. But I'm moving his mother or father-in-law's house, and he's there, and he just starts helping us move, and he asked me, "Are you guys hiring?" And I said, "Yeah, we sure are." And he says, "How much do you pay?" So I told him, and he said, "When can I start?" And I said, "We have a move right now after this one." And he jumps in the truck. I waved to his family and said, "I'll bring him back in one piece." And he's been with me for 5 years now. And he's the co-owner of the business with me. He runs the sales department. But it was really when I got Dylan on board is when we started growing, because I was just wearing way too many hats. And now I'm off the truck. I work here and there on the truck just to help the guys out and show them I can still do it. But what really changed the game for me was getting off the truck and working on the business. You hear it all the time: work you know, on the business, not in it, right? So
Absolutely. What and boy, there's a lot. I want to unpack a little bit of that because so let's talk about your Y operating system compared to Dylan's, because I took you guys through that work. So, as those of you who've worked with me, one of the things I do with every leader I work with, and when Nick and I started working together, is we went through his Y operating system. And you're hearing it in the stories he's telling already. You could probably tell that he's a contributor. One of the things we said in the introduction, he wants to make a difference in his community. And so his why is contribute. His how is make sense. So he's a problem solver. And you probably have already seen that in some of the stories he's already told. He sees a problem, he finds a way to fix it. And that's what he does. And his what is better way. So he's delivering a better way to move. So we've gone through some of the work to create even better messaging than you've already got. And then you found Dylan. Now,
yeah.
The difference in the contrast in you guys is pretty amazing. Both of you lead with contribute, but he's a clarifier. So
Right.
he moves a lot slower than you, Nick. As a make sense, better way guy, you get an idea and you're ready to move. You're I like to call you the kind of leader that's a ready, fire, aim kind of guy. And you said it already. I like to jump out of the plane and build a parachute, but on the way down. Dylan will never do that. Dylan will ask you, okay, how are we going to build it? Why can't we build it before we jump, right? What are the steps we're going to take? And what if it doesn't open? He's going to have a plan as a clarifier. He's going to ask all those questions you might forget to ask. And then what is trust? So both of you have just the noble whys of contribute and trust, of wanting to make a difference, building relationships based on trust. And you actually incorporate a trust into your messaging for your company, even though it's not one of your top three, it is a top three for your company. So you guys, even though your contribute makes sense, trust, your YOS as a company is contribute makes sense, trust. Your contribute makes sense, better way. So we got rid of better way and put trust in there because that comes from what you do, building trust. And a lot, I think if you're a transactional business, you only care, I think what would happen is you'd care about today's move. Let's close this deal. Let's get this move done as profitably as we can. And then let's move on. Versus what I've seen from you and where I've seen some of the growth coming for Faith Moving is from referrals and then repeat business. So now that we've talked about Dylan, bringing him on, what a difference that made. I'd also like to talk a little bit about, as we said about the mission. So what are you doing different than everyone else, not just in Albuquerque, but that you see across the country? And, we already had the fun with the way movers are portrayed, but you're doing some things different already. And here's the other part. It comes from you working on your business. I work with a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs with ideas. What I love about our check-ins, when we have check-ins, you put things into action. And that's a sign of a leader who's not in a truck doing the work. It's a sign of a leader who's working on the business and you're implementing those ideas. So tell us about some of those differences.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for me as a leader that has changed since being off the truck has been the ability to see each individual employee and their lives, and to form my broad goal. Tommy Mello from A1 Garage said it best. I want to have a dream so big that everybody else's dreams fits inside of it. And so I'm able to see each employee as an individual and create kind of like tailored plans for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ask all my guys when they first join to give me their goals, to write them down. I don't hire anybody if in the interview they don't have goals. Mm. It's just part of the standard here at Faith Moving Company. I want to find people who have goals because I want them to grow. I always tell people that I want this company to be a stepping stone for them, whether they stay with us for a little time or a long time. I want them to leave better. And a moving company is a revolving door. The average moving company is a revolving door because of the nature of the work. People get tired. It's hard work. It really is. And so I said, why does it doesn't have to be. That's just an excuse that everyone uses. That it's just a revolving door. That's how the industry is. I said, like there's got to be here goes a better way to do that. And so what I do differently is I challenge them to be uncomfortable, and I work out with my guys. I put a gym up in our warehouse. I'm constantly trying to teach them things I learned from you, things I learned from other mentors, trying to pass that along to them, because I don't want to just keep the knowledge in my mind, because I want my guys, my sales team, to be better at sales than I am. I want my movers to be better movers than I am, because that's if I am the best at everything, then there's no way we're going to grow. And so that's really where it took it. I took the hats off and gave it to them, because I may have been the best at selling on the phone, but I wasn't consistent because I was having to wear so many hats, and consistency outbeats perfection any day. So just challenging them to go think outside the box and to grow has been my number one contributing factor to our growth.
So how do you do that, Nick? For our leaders who may not be familiar with this framework, I love that interview question. What are your goals? And then the quote is amazing. Have a dream so big that everyone else dreams fit inside of it. So you're and I see this in the work that you do. You're developing leaders. You're not just teaching them how to move. You're creating leaders for the future. And you get to know everybody on your team personally, and you're invested in them. And that's easy to do when you got 3 or 4 people. But you've got a crew of about 20 some, right?
Yeah, we're 18 right now.
18. So you're dealing with that many different lives, personalities, and you wouldn't be able to take the time to get to know them if you were still on a truck. You'd get to know that crew that day. So you're able to take the time to get to know everyone. Tell me about what the dream is. Tell us, if I'm talking to you 10 years from now, what's that conversation? What are we talking about?
The goal is to franchise the name. So that way I can kind of stop with running the day-to-day operations of a moving company and really train other owners to be moving company owners. And so that coaching role is really what I want to get into. And I have a dream that if not all, most of my company owners for different franchise were originally movers. I want them to go up from the bottom all the way to the top. And I have dreams of expanding into Houston next year as my first. I'm not going to make it a franchise because that's a whole nother legal thing that I have to do, but I'm going to start a chapter out there, and I want to bring some of the guys with me from Albuquerque to help me start it out there, and then also promote from within here. So I have a big mission of finding those leaders to help keep, because I want to train them to want to love people's goals as well, because there's no way if I have a franchise I'm going to be able to know 3,000 people's goals and dreams and meet every one of them. But if my leaders in all those chapters can share the same mentality, then my dream will keep going.
We had when I was at the Y Institute, we interviewed a business owner. This is a Fortune 15 company, and he was a contributor like yourself. So when you talk about your dream, don't think you can't do it. But he was a CEO of, I think he led like 7 companies, and so he owned multiple companies. And when we asked him about the key to his success, he says, you know what the key is? I know something about every employee here. And that is that leadership presence. That's not just barking out orders, sitting behind a desk. It's getting to know everyone. This is somebody that, from the people working the docks to the people running the multiple businesses knew they could, if they saw him, they could walk up and say hello and get to know him. So I don't think that goes away. I think because that's always going to be something that I think you're driven by, is that people connection, right? That I don't think it'd be any fun for you if you weren't connecting with your people.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, that's inspiring. That's amazing.
So let's talk about your vision. I have a vision. You have a vision to build a business that reflects Christ's love through compassionate service, transforming the moving experience into an opportunity to uplift others and strengthen community. So when we talk about that vision, one of the things that we espouse at Why Not Leadership is tell people what you believe. Because when you tell people what you believe, you attract people who believe what you believe. So when you have a vision that involves serving in a way that reflects Christ's love through compassionate service and transforming that moving experience. Even the name, where the name of the company comes from, is from a biblical quote: "Faith moving." Right, the faith of the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. How has that worked? What kind of people, and I know the answer to this because we've done the work, but for the people that are listening, how has that worked out for you in terms of the people that you're attracting that are hiring you?
Yeah, it seems to be to repel the people that don't want to work with us, and attract the people that do. And what I mean by the people that don't want to work with us is just the people who don't see the value in what we're providing. Some people just want a really cheap price, and they don't really care about the value. I mean, there's some people that drive a Toyota Corolla, like I drive a Toyota Corolla, or there's some people that drive a BMW. They
Right.
will both get you to point A to point B, but there's a big price difference, and there's a lot of value in the two vehicles. So that's kind of what we try to do, the more high end service, as far as like the full service packing, and people who are attracted to the name are bought in right away because they want those values in their home. Let's face it,
Right.
we're strangers in their homes, and they just don't know what they're going to get, but they do know what they're going to get with Faith Moving Company, because of the way we present ourselves from the very beginning when they first contact our sales office, and that's what attracts them.
I love that. One thing I want to make sure that we talk about. I talked earlier about you implement things. There's nobody I've worked with that does as much work on themselves outside of the work you're doing with me. I hear from you going to conferences and learning from others, and you're quoting leaders that you're listening to, books that you're reading, and then you bring that into your business. You had, and again, this again comes from you give yourself time to think, and you come up with these great ideas, and then you implement them. But one great idea that you shared with me, and I want you to share it, and I don't know, and I believe that, and if you say, Dan, hey, I don't want to give that away, but one thing that you did that was genius. One of the things you do is you work with realtors, so you
Oh yeah.
bring them value. What a smart thing to do is to work with people who are working with people who are going to be moving, right?
Yeah.
They're either selling a house or buying a house. Either way, they got to move stuff from their house to their new place, whether they're selling or buying. Their stuff has to move. So you've developed some great relationships with the real estate industry. So I think that's a real key. But you thought of a value add
Yeah.
for female realtors who are doing open houses. We've all read the stories. We've all seen the stories about somebody being attacked or assaulted while doing an open house. If you're a female, even if you're a male, if you're alone in a big house in a sketchy neighborhood, it can be dangerous to hold that open house. So tell us about that idea and the kind of reaction you got to that, because I think, again, that's an idea that doesn't come to you if you're working in your business. If you're working in your business, you're thinking about, when do I need to go to the next move, next appointment? How do I load that truck? You were working on your business, and you had a great idea that you shared. So tell us about it.
So I don't mind sharing secrets, because if people hear it, I want people to level up, because then it'll challenge me to get even that much better. So I'm okay telling my secrets there. But yeah, so I had I presented to a group of realtors, about 300 realtors at a award ceremony, and I was sponsoring. And at the end, I realized that a lot of them are a lot of these women and men are alone in Albuquerque, which is not the greatest. If you're listening to this, uh, podcast from somewhere else, uh, there's some crime in certain areas, just like there is in every big city, but there's some crime in certain areas, um, and you hear about it on the news that, like you were saying, that realtors are being attacked in homes. So I told the realtors that if if they feel uneasy in a home, when they're doing an open house, to give us a call. And if we do have anybody available, we'll send one or two guys down to basically sit there with them, and run security, uh, and keep them safe, because they really do mean a lot to us, the realtors, and we just want to see people be safe. And so that was my uh, my offer, and I mean, I got a standing ovation. It was a word ceremony. It was probably the loudest cheer of the night for that. I think it just showed that people really really loved that idea, and uh, they thought it was a really kind offer, and I
Yeah.
I stand by it. I haven't had anybody uh, take me up on the offer yet, though. I'm surprised, but
Well, I think they probably got to settle into it. I think
yeah,
here we'll give everybody some business advice. If you have that idea, let's get that first one under our belt. Again, let's try it. You have to at least try it, right? So get somebody to try it and do it, and then they'll tell about their experience, right? And listen, I met your team. You've got a boxer on the team. You've got some big guys that if I'm alone somewhere where I think my safety's in jeopardy, I wouldn't mind having one of the
yeah,
faith moving company guys with me, just to as a backup, because
yeah,
regardless of the situation, it's always good to just not even be alone, right?
right,
Plus it gives you an opportunity to market the business. And that is, when you said I'm not afraid of sharing my secrets, that is such a better way trait. We tell people, when your why is better way, you want to find better ways to do things, and then you want to share them. And so
yeah,
we're giving you a platform to share some of those great ideas with other people. I want to get into your leadership style a little bit, Nick. Let's talk about, what you went from being a solopreneur, where you're driving your Toyota Corolla, as you said, with dollies hanging out the door, and you've got, and then with a trailer attached to having a big crew. You've got a big crew. You have your meetings. Um, Tell me about, how has your leadership changed? If I were to see you 5 years ago versus today, what are you doing differently
mhm,
that makes you more effective?
yeah. I'd be doing everything myself. Uh, you know, I I'd be taking phone calls on the truck while moving, stressed out of my mind. I'd be wearing every hat possible, and I'd be really unhappy with the business. Uh, my wife is really my rock, and one day I was driving home from a move, and just really stressed out about the moving industry in general, and I half of my face went numb. I thought I was having a stroke. I was so stressed. So I called her, and she's a nurse, and she was like, "Are you having a stroke?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I was just really unhappy at the time with the business, and she looked at me that night and said, "Do you even want to continue this business?"
Hmm.
And it really hit me. It made me think, and it kind of got my butt into gear.
Hmm.
So I was like, I can't do this alone, And uh, Dylan was with me still at the time, but I still wasn't letting go of the reins.
Yeah.
I wasn't giving anybody any any leadership roles,
Hmm.
in the business. So 5 years ago, I was definitely worn out, and shoot, 3 years ago, I was worn out.
Yeah.
I think it was like about 3 years ago is when I really gave up the reins and said, you know what? Like I said, I'm not consistent with this stuff. Let's give some people some responsibilities, and that's when it really changed.
What have you noticed since
Yeah.
you've done that? You know, one of the things I talk about is, and it's amazing to hear this from you. Nick is a young man, not even in his 40s yet, but I interviewed a 92-year-old on the podcast, and he was sharing his experience. He was a giant in the insurance industry with the Lujan agencies here in New Mexico, Ed
Mhm.
Lujan. And one of the things he shared, he said, Dan, you know, one of the things that I learned in leading the insurance agencies is when I had 12 employees, it was like multiplying myself. I didn't have to do everything. Everybody had something that they were good at. And so when they came into work, they did that thing. And then I worked on one thing. I learned that if I could work on one thing, I could be really good at it. And so he worked on his one thing that he was really good at, and he let the other 11 people do what they were good at. And so he multiplied himself
Yeah.
12-fold versus trying to do everything himself even after he had a team.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part for you in terms of letting go? And what's been the benefit of letting go and letting people do things and lead and do things their own way, possibly based on you trusting them and letting
Yeah.
them be leaders?
Yeah. The hardest thing at first, from with letting go, was I felt a little bit lost. I felt like, well, what am I gonna do? You know, and that's when it really got me to start thinking about growing the business and business
Hmm.
development and what I can do. And that's the stuff I really like doing, is developing my team, developing the business, marketing. I love marketing. And so what it gave me was clarity. It gave me like a lot of clarity on where I can grow this business, and it just gave me a lot of energy
Hmm.
to grow it. So yeah, but at first it was like, what did I just do? Because when you do all the little tasks, you feel busy, right? You feel like you're accomplishing things. You can check things off your list, but is it actually moving the needle forward?
Right.
You're feeling busy but not productive.
Yeah, there's a big difference between productive and busy.
Yeah.
One of the things I stress to CEOs that I work with, and you've probably heard this from me, Nick, is as your responsibility grows,
Hmm.
your responsibilities should diminish. You
Mm,
have less and less responsibilities because you have a bigger responsibility.
right.
Right? Does that make sense? You should have less things to do every day, but the two or three things that you have to do should be big and impactful. And I think you've done a great job of moving into that role of those impactful. You make the impactful decisions that help your company grow. And then you're
Yeah.
making them and then you're implementing them and you're growing your team and creating leaders. What's been when has someone surprised you? Because one of the things I know is we can't be as leaders of our companies if we're the best at everything. That's a
Mhm.
pretty low standard, right? Because we're
Yeah.
really good at one thing, one or two things. All of us have two or three gifts that we're really good at, and we should let other people shine. Is there a time something that you gave up that you thought you were doing great at and then you gave it to someone else and they did even better than you could ever imagined?
Everything. No. Um, sales.
Yeah.
Sales for sure. Yeah. Dylan is awesome at sales, and he's trained David so well. Um, I mean, he's taken it by the reins and with very little instruction from me, and grown my department really well. So yeah, I think sales was the big thing. I
Yeah.
love talking with people, but it's more on a personal level, like
Mhm.
customer service, not so much on the
Right.
sales side. So,
Yeah, and I've met Dylan and I've seen his sales process and he's taken me through it. And of course, having spent 30 some years in the sales space, we had some things in common that we shared, but he's brilliant and he has a great way with people. One of the things you guys do differently is you go into people's homes
yeah.
and you
Yep.
tour and you look at stuff. And I think it's such a key asking questions. Dylan's so good as a clarifier at asking questions that help you create a moving experience that's unique to that client. When you guys shared with me your ideal client story, where you were moving a bunch of antiques and very valuable artifacts that this gentleman owned, and you were able to take care of everything, where he was just so extremely satisfied. You even had one guy go out of their way and fix something. What was it that they fixed? Tell us about that story, because that was a great story.
Oh man, he had moved military with military movers for years. I mean, he had 20 plus movers. At the end of the move, he said, "We are by far the best," which was a great testament to my team. But one of the things that just stood out to him was he had this little toy train. He collected trains, and he had this little toy train that he just couldn't fix for the life of him. He wasn't like super. He was more. He wasn't very handy, but my guys are. And Gavin, while he was packing this, saw that it could be fixed, and he took his little screwdriver out and fixed it for him. And the guy saw him do this and was like blown away by Gavin. He didn't have to do it. He just did it out of the kindness of his heart.
Yeah,
and that really stood out to him. We in the same move, we moved dinosaur bones, and it was like $750,000 worth of art. So I mean, there's a few more gray hairs on my head from that, but
that's awesome. No, and that, again, that points to the specificity of treating each client like they're an individual movie. You don't treat them like they're part of the big scheme of things, and you don't treat everybody the same. Everybody has different things that they need to get done. And I think Dylan does a great job of personalizing every move, and I think that makes you stand out also from everyone else. Tell me a little bit about the ripple effect you've seen from changing the way you lead.
Yeah. I've seen my guys' lives change from when they got here to when they leave, or if they're still here. From starting side businesses to buying to buying cars. I always tell the guys, I want to see new cars in this parking lot next year. I always tell them, I want to see new cars in this parking lot. I want to see you guys. I had a couple guys start businesses, and I coach them in it, and they're growing. And I'm like, I told 𝗵𝗵, the boxer, told 𝗵𝗵, man, I hope you leave me, because that means your business is booming. And he's just like blown away, like, what?
Yeah.
And
No, go ahead.
Yeah. And I think some of the most impactful things that really make me happy going home is seeing their relationships change with their wives and their spouses and their kids. Because I've been there to where I was just working, and I miss the first 2 years of my kid's life because I was working, and then I just said something's got to change. And so I've taught them how to manage time, and how things I've learned through trial and error, and how to treat their wives. And they come back telling me about success stories.
Did you perhaps think there's got to be a better way?
Yeah.
There's got to be a better way to do this, right? And now you're sharing it with your team. And you're living into your why so well.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question with regards to you're leading differently now. What part of yourself did you have to reclaim in order to lead the way you do now versus the way you led in the past?
Yeah. So I realized that what got me here won't get me there. And so I had to step into 𝗏 2.0. I don't even know if I had to reclaim anything. I think I just had to develop something different. Because I could, I could have easily just kept doing what I was doing and grinding, and within 10 years would have probably got to my goals. But I was like, no, why waste any time? Just become a better person, because when you grow, your business grows. So I had to reclaim the fire in me to take it to the next level.
Excellent. So what was when you say reclaim that fire?
Hmm.
What was that? What was that process like?
It's like I get like, I'm a Christian man, but I get angry. I get angry. I get angry with myself, and in a good way. It's
Hmm.
like this anger of me not growing my business to the level it should be, but not doing the steps I need to do has cost me that business
Hmm.
that it could be.
Right.
And I yeah, that is just it's a fire in me. It's like
You beat
I get
yourself up, but then you recover and you go back and do it better.
yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, you learn, right? You
yeah,
learn from your experience.
yeah, right.
Oh,
It really is. It's God's timing. It really is,
mm,
and that's something that I had to fall into
mhm.
because I see with social media, you see all these people succeeding, and yes, it's their success, but my success is God's timing, and is my plans written, and everybody needs to hear that message of it doesn't matter what the next person is doing. It's God's timing, and as long as you keep going with the vision that He's given you, or whatever you believe in, whatever vision you have, it's the timing is everything, and so
Yeah.
don't get discouraged.
I think that's wonderful testament to your faith, because a lot of us will tend to get frustrated, right? We see,
Yeah,
and one of the things we have to know about social media is a highlight reel, right?
yeah,
Social,
exactly.
we don't put when we fail grandiosely, we don't post that on social media. We post when we win. We post the wins, and so if you're only looking at somebody's highlight reel and comparing it to your real life, you're going to find that it's going to disappoint you, right? Because you're
Yeah,
looking at somebody's highlight reel versus what's really true. And I love that you have that patience to say, you know what, God's timing is different, and it
yeah,
may be I may be on a slower pace, but on a different trajectory. You've done something that not a lot of leaders do, in that you've done some of the deep work. Well, so we've gone, at Why Not Leadership, we believe that change starts with self-awareness, and we started that process with you. So tell me about, I think it would be good to share for those, if somebody's thinking about entering into, uh, you know, getting a coach and working with a coach. How have your relationships at work and at home changed since you went through doing this deep work of learning more about yourself, understanding yourself better, what drives you and how you operate, and then understanding your team? How have your relationships changed at work and at home?
yeah. They've greatly increased with clarity on both sides. I'm able to be where my feet are. I'm able to, when I'm at work, be at work. When I'm at home, be at home. You always see those people bringing home to work and bringing work to home. And I did that for too long. And my wife, you could tell, was wearing on her. She started
Mhm.
to resent the business, really did. Because she's like, why would I like this thing that's beating my husband up constantly?
Right.
And so I realized I can't bring the negatives home to her. And so the negatives started to really slip away. There's always going to be things that happen in business, but the negatives started to slip away when I started empowering my team and being present there with them, and getting the most I can out of the day and going home. And honestly, this past only 4 months we've worked together has been huge, because you've taught me a way to do just that, leave work at work, because you've taught me this cool method of uh, of having a list of things, a weekly rhythm registry that I can do, and I can feel confident going home knowing that the things are done uh, from work. So I really thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't looking for a compliment, but I will take it and
No,
say
no,
thank
yeah,
you, Nick.
yeah,
As I will definitely accept that. But I think it speaks to your discipline, because you can have the list of things to do, but if you don't get it done, you're
yeah,
still going to take the stress home, right? If you know that there's things you didn't get done, uh, but even just going through that list for me at the end of the day and saying, okay, that didn't get done. I'm moving it to tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's another day. It's God's timing, right? Today was, I had to spend extra time on doing other things, and I'll see how that turns out. But just that self-evaluation, you've done a great job of implementing and then getting the most out of that stuff. What would you say, Nick? Let's finish with this question. What would you say to someone who is working at FedEx, working at a moving company, or working somewhere that has a dream, and they're wanting to, they're afraid to get started? What would you say to someone to help them step into that dream and get it started, so that they don't look back 10 years from now and regret and say, gosh, I could have started Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever the dream is. Let's get your answer on that.
Pretty simple. I would just say, is the fear of starting something, is the fear of doing the hard work right now, fear of the unknown, is that worse than the feeling that you would get at the end of your life saying, man, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have accomplished it. And, think about that feeling you would have on your deathbed saying, man, I wish I had started that business or asked that girl out or anything. And think about that feeling and say, you know what, wish granted, because I'm here now in the present and I can do it. So that's what I would tell somebody.
I love that. One of the things we say at Why Not Leadership is the only regrets on the Lead Different podcast. We say that at the end of our life, we don't regret the things we did. We regret the things we didn't do. And you've captured that perfectly. And I think, and I want to commend you, because you also said, why not? Why not go start my business? Why not hire Dylan? Why not hire a bunch of movers? Why not train them? Why not prepare? A lot of people say, well, if you train your people too well, they'll leave you. And I used to say to those people, look, you either train your people and have an excellent team and lose some of them, or you don't train them and you have an awful team, right?
Yeah.
You've got to train your team. I'd rather have a well-trained team where they're turning over because they're moving forward, or have a crappy team that stays forever because they've got no dreams, no ambitions, and we're kind of just staying at this level. You're living that, Nick, and I appreciate you as a young leader being confident enough to train your people to leave. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because what if you don't train them? What if you train them and they leave? Or but worse, what if, like you said, what if you don't train them and they stay?
Right. Yeah. If they stay, but they're just not doing a great job. You're doing a fantastic job. I'm inspired by you, Nick. I know our listeners will be inspired. Guys, please, as always, and when we finish the podcast, make sure you give this podcast a like, give it a share. Tell us what you think in the comments. And, we're going to put Nick's contact information. If you're in Albuquerque and in the New Mexico area and you're looking for a different way to move, this is who you've got to reach out to, Nick Fehrenbach at Faith Moving Company. He's got a great operation. He's easy to find, and he's on Facebook. You're on Instagram. Are you on YouTube also, Nick?
We have a few little clips here. We're trying to get more involved in that.
Fantastic. I know he recently went through a course on social media, so you're going to see a lot more of Nick, and he's got some great videos out there, so reach out to him. But until next time, Nick, what do you say we end the show on that note?
Dan, why not?
Thanks, my friend. Thank you for being on. Thank you for inspiring our listeners. Thank you for being a part of our Why Not leadership journey, and for being on the Lead Different podcast. We'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Lead Different podcast. Have a great rest of your week.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.